So welcome everyone. I'm Siobhan Leachman. I'm an avid Wikimedian. I edit English Wikipedia, Wikidata and Wikimedia Commons, and currently I'm the Wikimedian in residence at Manaaki Whenua Landcare Research. And that's a group currently in the New Zealand Bioeconomy Science Institute.
Kia ora, everyone. My name is Heidi Might, and I work as a botany curator at the Museum of New Zealand, Te Papa Tongarewa, sometimes just known as Te Papa. I also am a Wikipedian, so I edit in English and Spanish Wikipedia, Wikidata, and Wikimedia Commons. And I do this both as part of my job as botany curator, but also as myself in my own free time. Now, if you want to contact us after the webinar, our emails are provided in this slide. We have a QR code here that you can take a photo of with your phone. That will take you to our webinar information page online. I'm just admitting people as I'm talking.
If you'd like, I can do this bit next, Heidi.
This web page also collates all the information we'll be covering today in one place. So you don't have to remember everything right now. You do have these slides and this web page to go back to later on. So there'll be a link to these slides on this web page, and there's a link to a selection of how to edit resources listed on the webinar page as well. The last link on this page is our questions document. So you can open that now. It's just a Google Doc where you can actually write questions to us, and we're going to write the answers to, hopefully as we go, if not after the seminar. You can also put your questions in the Zoom chat or the Zoom Q&A, and we'll be checking all three of these documents. Please note that in these slides, in this slide deck, anything that is underlined is a link to further resources. So please make note of that. This is a great resource. These slides are a great resource for you to use later. And this next slide shows the overview for the webinar today. So we are going to cover editing English Wikipedia as a first part of the talk. Then we're going to move into adding and using images to the image repository Wikimedia Commons in the second part of the talk. And finally, in the last part of the talk, we're going to cover editing Wikidata. So be prepared, guys, for quite a dense presentation. Our presentation is timed to be about 40 minutes. And then we're going to have the last 20 minutes for questions, at which time we'll turn the camera off so we can just have a good face-to-face chat about things. So again, feel free to add questions to the question doc, to the chat. And as we present, we'll try to get to them, but we'll definitely get to them in the question session after we've finished presenting. And I'll also be just dropping some links to things in the chat as we go.
So why should you care about contributing to Wikipedia? Well, first, it's one of the most used sites on the internet. Wikipedia is one of the top search results when you're searching content on the internet. And Wikipedia articles and their content are also consistently and reused by other organizations and websites. So just a few examples include iNaturalist and the Atlas of Living Australia, which both use Wikipedia articles, and the Catalogue of Life has previously used Wikipedia articles as a data set to help resolve and aggregate species names. I'm also aware of scientists who use well-referenced species articles as a quick way to link through to scientific literature. And I've seen organisations such as newspapers, radio websites, conservation and activist groups reuse both text and images used in Wikipedia articles. So Wikipedia is a really easy way to share biodiversity knowledge and to get the more editors that edit an article, the greater the accuracy and depth of the information contained in those articles. Now, Wikipedia is a free, open content online encyclopedia created through a collaborative effort of a community of users called Wikipedians. And anyone can edit Wikipedia, but always keep in mind that it is an encyclopedia. So it's not for beliefs, opinions, unreferenced facts, misinformation, or disinformation. Now, there are main core content policies that apply to editing Wikipedia. Everyone should edit Wikipedia with a neutral point of view. It's not a place to push a particular agenda, and all information added to Wikipedia should be verifiable. Readers of an article should be able to go to the source of the information on the article and be able to verify that that was what actually was said. Wikipedia is not a place for original, unpublished research. Now, there are multiple content guidelines to help editors add appropriate information to Wikipedia. And this slide here contains, sorry, is it that one? Yeah, content guidelines. This slide here contains the links to these guidelines if you'd like to investigate them further. Now, there are two particular relevant guidelines that we actually want to emphasize today. The first is the Wikipedia notability criteria. Articles should be credited for should only be created rather for notable topics. And topics are notable for the purposes of Wikipedia if they're covered by significant reliable resources. Now, if a topic does not have significant coverage in reliable sources, it is not notable for the purposes of Wikipedia. Most species are notable for the purposes of Wikipedia because they normally have coverage in reliable sources such as their description, the original description of those species, as well as other databases and websites dealing with those species. Reliable sources tend to be published books, academic articles, government or local reports, or reputable websites.
So there are kind of a few guidelines to follow when you edit Wikipedia. And you can read more about each of these different guidelines on the links on this slide. So just to give you a brief overview, the first guideline is actually a positive one. It's be bold. We would like everyone to be bold and help make Wikipedia a better encyclopedia. So this means fix something yourself instead of just talking about it. But also, don't be upset if your bold edits get reverted or changed. So what we like to talk about is this idea of catching a topic, fixing it, and then releasing. So catch and release, letting it go. The second one is also a positive one. So it's assume good faith. Assume good faith means assume that most people, just like you, are trying to help the project, not hurt it, even if their actions and edits might seem or actually be harmful or hurtful. The third one is don't infringe on a creator's copyright. And what this means is don't reuse their work outside the limits of what is legally allowed. And we'll get into a little bit more detail on what that actually means in another slide. Also, don't plagiarize. So if you're going to write anything in Wikipedia, you should write in your own words, and you should back any factual statements with an inline citation to that reputable source, which supports the statement you just wrote. Finally, be aware of this thing called conflict of interest, or COI. Now, this is especially if you, perhaps as a botanist, are editing in your area of expertise in botany. So because these last two on this slide are quite chunky items, we're just going to discuss these a little bit more in detail in the next two slides. So going back to that idea of plagiarism and copyright. If you take away anything from this slide, it is that copyright is very complex. You should always err on the side of caution when you're dealing with copyright. Saying that, it is possible to reuse works in what we call the Wikiverse if they are in the public domain or if they've been openly licensed. So for Wiki projects, because the servers that run the Wikimedia Foundation projects are in the United States, to reuse public domain content, it must be in the public domain in actually 3 different places. In the public domain of the country you are currently working from, the public domain of the source country where that content comes from, and the public domain of the United States because the servers are based there. So this is why copyright can be so complex, because those three different countries may have different laws about copyright. Reusing content in Wikipedia gets a little easier if the content is openly sourced. Openly licensed, excuse me. In practical terms, what does openly licensed mean? It means the work is licensed for reuse under any of, again, three different Commons, Creative Commons copyright licenses. So those three licenses are Creative Commons Zero license, Creative Commons Attribution license, or Creative Commons Attributions Share Alike license. Even when reusing works in Wikipedia, you should still give attribution for that reuse. Now, whether the content is in the public domain or openly licensed, if it's a written work, you should still create citations in the Wikipedia article to show where you obtain that information. So we've included a link to examples of attribution template you can use to assist in this work. That's written work. What about images? So for the reuse of images, Wikimedia Commons gives more specific guidance on copyright and the copying of images into Wikimedia Commons. Again, see these links in the slide. If you have any doubt about any of this, please ask for someone else for help. There's lots of Wikipedians who can help you with this. Now, just to say, none of us are complete experts in this field, but some of us or other Wikipedians do have enough working knowledge to assist you if you're attempting to work out whether you can or can't reuse content, whether it's in the public domain or licensed. So moving back into conflict of interest. So what is conflict of interest? It means editing that involves contributing to Wikipedia that's about yourself, your family, your friends, your clients, your employers, your financial interests, or your other relationships. So it's pretty simple. If you have a connection to an article subject, please do not edit that article. However, it does get complicated for some editors and sub-subjects, like the example I discussed previously. I'm a botanist. Many of you are botanists or have a particular expertise in a particular area. And you probably want to edit about that in Wikipedia because you know about this topic and you're passionate about it. So in my case, I'm a botanist. I research, I publish on native New Zealand forget-me-not species. Can I write about native New Zealand forget-me-not species on Wikipedia? Well, yes, I can do that. But on my user page, you can see a screenshot of part of it here. I am very transparent about this conflict of interest. I make sure I take in the article a neutral point of view. I also make sure I'm not just citing any articles I may have published about this subject, but I'm citing all of the articles and making sure I get all of the points of view about that particular subject. Finally, we wanted to bring up this important topic of Indigenous knowledge in Wikimedia projects. Many editors and Wikimedia chapters are grappling with whether and how it is actually appropriate to include Indigenous knowledge in the open platform of Wiki. We believe these issues can only be addressed by the Indigenous communities themselves, or possibly in collaboration with them. There is starting to be an awareness within the Australian and New Zealand Wiki editor communities of these issues, but this is definitely in its infancy. We put some examples here on the screen. So Wikimedia Australia actually has an Indigenous knowledge sharing policy, and you can go to that link to find more details about it. Our group, Wikimedia Aotearoa New Zealand, in their mission statement, have the aims of demonstrating respect for the diversity of their members and acknowledging Te Ao Māori, the Māori worldview, Matauranga Māori, Māori Indigenous knowledge, and the bicultural nature of Aotearoa New Zealand. So in this slide, we link to a great Wikimedia blog who's written by a Māori Wikipedian whose username is World's Greatest Mum. And she gives insight into the tension between Wikimedia's mission of open access knowledge on the one hand and Māori frameworks of knowledge sharing on the other hand. So we encourage anyone contributing to the Wikiverse to bear this topic in mind when editing and learn more about it.
So I'm now going to run through a very quick orientation of a Wikipedia page. To start with, obviously, you've got the actual article itself. And if you want to edit that article, you should click the Edit tab on the right-hand side of the page. That should allow you to edit the article in Visual Editor, so it basically looks like a Word document on a computer. If you end up on a page being in Wiki markup with little bits of code and it looks a little bit confusing, just go to the pencil sign, click the drop down, and then choose Visual Editor to take you back to the easier way to edit. You don't need an account to edit Wikipedia, but anytime you save and edit, your IP address will become publicly available. So, and also the rest of the editing community will be much more skeptical of your edits if you don't have an account. And we'll be covering how to sign up for an account in a couple of slides. Taking you through the other tabs on the Wikipedia page, next to the edit button for the article, there's also a view history tab. This gives you the entire history of all the edits that happened to an article by all the editors that have contributed to that article since the page was created. And this is where your IP address will be visible if you edit that article without having an account. Going back to the left-hand side, next to the article tab, there's a tab called the talk tab. This takes you to the talk page for the Wikipedia article. Now, talk page normally contains an information box that gives you the various wiki projects to which that article belongs. Wiki projects are where editors collaborate together to improve a group of articles. The talk page is also where you can add content if you have a conflict of interest and can't directly edit the article. It's also where other editors may raise issues or talk to one another about the article. However, this mainly tends to happen when there's some controversy about something on the actual article itself. Now, if you are keen to get started but don't already have an account, you can create one by going to the top right-hand side of Wikipedia and press the Create Account tab. The website will then take you through the steps needed. Now, remember to save your account name and password somewhere safe so you can log in again at a future date. It's worth ensuring Wikipedia has your email, which it will definitely protect. Basically, if you do this, if you forget your password, Wikipedia can then help you create a new one. And the link on this slide takes you to a very short video that shows you the actual sign-up process, how to go through the actual sign-up process. After you've created your account, you can then edit Wikipedia articles. Press the edit button, place your cursor where you need it in the article, and just start typing. Remember to frequently publish your edits. Add a short note to describe the edit that you've just made when you're about to save it. And this note, along with your username, will appear basically in the article history page, explaining how you've edited that article. Now, when you add factual statements to Wikipedia, you should always ensure that those statements are referenced with their source. And you can do this by placing your cursor after the punctuation of the statement and then press the Cite button. This activates the Citoid tool, and then you can add either the ISBN number for the book, the DOI for the article, the URL for the web page, or even a Wikidata QID for a publication, and the tool will automatically generate a citation. You can also press the Manual tab if you wish to manually type the necessary information about that citation in, and you only have to do these actions once, because if you want to reuse the citation to support other statements you've made in that article, it's just a matter of pressing the Citoid Reuse tab and then selecting which citation you want to reuse.
So that was your 15-minute crash course in Wikipedia. And now we are going to go into Wikimedia Commons for botanists. So what is Wikimedia Commons or Wiki Commons? It's basically the image repository for Wikipedia, Wikidata, and other wiki projects. As a general rule, if you want to add an image to a Wikipedia article, it has to first be placed in Wikimedia Commons, and that's where you're going to grab it from. If you want to upload an image into Wikimedia Commons, you first need to log into your account, assuming you haven't done so already. You can use your same Wikipedia account as it works for all the wiki platforms. we've added links here to two really great resources to guide you through how to upload a single image taken by yourself into Wikimedia Commons. The easiest way is to go to the main page of Wikimedia Commons, click that blue upload button on the top right, and then let the system guide you through the process. But since most of us here are botanists in the room or scientists of some sort, you may be quite familiar with iNaturalist. And we're going to walk you through this really amazing tool that I use pretty much every day to upload images from iNaturalist into Wikimedia Commons. This is one of many tools that exists in the Wiki community to help you add images to Wikimedia Commons. So the tool that I'm talking about today is called iNat2Wiki, and it's a tool that you, as I mentioned, can use to upload images from iNaturalist. So first, task number one is to find an image in iNaturalist that you want to upload, say this one, and then copy the iNaturalist observation number for that image into the tool. And in just 2 clicks, you can upload it into Commons. So I'm just going to take you through this workflow, and you can come back later and follow the workflow by watching the video again to work through your own example. So these are the basic steps we're going to cover in the next slide. So first, as I mentioned, find your observation. You may already have one in mind, but if you don't, and you've never used the filters in iNaturalist, use them now to find an observation that for a particular taxon, and you want to make sure your filters are turned on for a research grade observation, and it needs to be an openly licensed one. So you'll need to run this filter 3 times to check the 3 open licenses I mentioned previously, the Creative Commons 0, the Creative Commons CC BY, and the Creative Commons CC BY Share Alike, or CC BY SA. Once you've found your observation, say it's this one, you copy that observation ID from iNaturalist into the iNat2Wiki tool parse window. You click submit. Then on this window, if the image was actually not openly licensed, even though you thought it was, you would get an error message here. But since this one was openly licensed, you see the image you want to upload, and it appears here, and you choose that image and you click that button that says upload to Commons. Now the next slide might look a little bit daunting, but all this is showing you is the source code that it's automatically built to go around the image in Wikimedia Commons. Just check that the text looks correct. It should be correct. You may want to change the file name that it's suggesting, but actually the automatically suggested file name is pretty good, because what does it have? It includes the taxon name of the species the photograph is of. It includes the photographer's name, so there's that attribution back to the photographer, and it includes the image identifier, so that's something you can always go back to in iNaturalist to find. If you're okay with all this information, you click upload file, and that's it. Your image will now appear on Wikimedia Commons and can be reused on Wikipedia or anywhere else.
So once you've added your image to Wikimedia Commons, you can then reuse it in any language Wikipedia, including English Wikipedia. If you want to add an image to the body of the article, you place your cursor in the part of the article where you'd like to insert it. Then you can click the insert button at the top right of the edit bar on the article. Click the Images and Media tab, and then choose the image you'd like to add. Now, this is a particularly helpful method if you've already just uploaded that image into Wikimedia Commons, because the tool automatically brings up the last images that you yourself have added to Wikimedia Commons. If you want to add any other image, you'll likely have to search for it in Wikimedia Commons and then use the file name to edit with this method. Now, if you want to add an image to the info box of a Wikipedia article, the quickest way is to copy the file name from Wikimedia Commons, so the image file name, and then click on the info box in the Wikipedia article and add the file name to the image name box, and then press apply changes to save that image. And that's the end of the Wikimedia Commons portion of this presentation. Now we're going to move on to Wikidata. Wikidata is a sister project to Wikipedia. It's like the data backbone for the encyclopedia. While Wikipedia provides text, Wikidata stores structured data that's human and machine readable. Wikidata is a free, open knowledge base that anyone can edit. It's multilingual by design, so you can use it in many different languages. It can be read and edited by humans and applications, so it's easy to improve in single item or thousands of them. The data can be queried, and because the data is openly licensed under a Creative Commons zero license, it can be reused without restriction. And really importantly, Wikidata acts as a hub for external identifiers. And this structure, openness, and accessibility makes it a really powerful way to answer some very complex questions. So I'm going to go into a bit more detail about explaining about Wikidata. As I've said, it's made out of structured data, that is data that's linked to other data, and thing one is linked to thing two. And that linked structure is often called a triple because it's made up of three parts: a subject, a predicate, and an object. So for example, the botanist Anethmetica is the subject. She has an occupation, which is the predicate, of botanist, which is the object. And as you can see in this illustration in this slide, multiple such structured data statements can be made in Wikidata, and this leads to this web of knowledge that can then be queried. Wikidata is multilingual, so each item expresses a concept represented by a Wikidata QID number, which is a unique identifier shown in the parentheses in the Wikidata item label. And this concept can then be expressed in multiple languages in Wikidata. You can also read and add data to Wikidata in many languages, and you can do this by pressing the language icon at the top right of the Wikidata screen. And once you've pressed the wheel icon at the top bottom right of the pop-up, you can then, this takes you to the language settings, and you can decide what language you'd like to edit Wikidata in, as well as what language you'd like to see Wikidata in. Now, just like Wikipedia and Wikimedia Commons, anyone can edit Wikidata, whether or not you have an account. But if you do have an account, other editors are much more likely to assume you're editing in good faith. If you don't have an account, again, if you edit, your IP address will be recorded in the history of those edits. And the community tends to be much more suspicious of these types of edits because there is vandalism that takes place. Now, as I said, Wikidata is licensed under a CC0 license. This means that the structured data is dedicated to the public domain and is able to be reused by anyone for anything. So when adding data to Wikidata, it's recommended that the source of the data should also be cited so that people could trace where it came from and make judgments about its reliability. And as I said, one of the most important elements of Wikidata is that it acts as an identifier hub. In this slide, you can see all the identifiers added to the Wikidata item for the botanist Anethmetica. The text is small because there's just so many identifiers listed on her item. If you look closely, you'll see library identifiers, archive identifiers, online encyclopedia identifiers, botany database identifiers, natural history institution database identifiers, genealogical database identifiers, and the list just goes on. And so Wikidata actually acts as a bridge between one institution's data and another institution's data. And of course, all this data is queryable. If you know the Sparkle query language, you can use the Wikidata query service to query Wikidata. Basically, the query service also allows you to visualize that data. So for the example here, you can see a map of all the herbaria in New Zealand that I basically did myself, amazingly. If you don't know Sparkle, you can be like me and use the basic Wikidata query builder to query Wikidata. But if you need something a bit more complex, you can actually ask the Wikidata community to build a query for you.
So, how is Wikidata actually useful to us as botanists and other scientists? And another way is that other platforms link to Wikidata using either the Wikidata identifier or the QID. So what site does this? Sites such as the Biodiversity Heritage Library, or BHL, another website called Bionomia. They both use Wikidata to pull information about authors, collectors, scientists, and display that information on their web pages. So other institutions like natural history institutions, such as my institution, Te Papa, we add Wikidata QID numbers to our own internal collection management system. And then we in turn show this as a link in our data set or in our website. So this reuse of Wikidata information means we can access the same information from multiple places, multiple websites. And just as one example, this can help us to disambiguate botanists and collectors much more easily and with confidence. So here you can see an example from the Biodiversity Heritage Library. And the red box is showing on the BHL webpage, they're linking to the Wikidata QID number for a particular author. BHL then also has the option of pulling in other identifiers from Wikidata. So identifiers that Siobhan mentioned, like the library identifier, VF, archives identifiers, or researcher identifiers like ORCID, it can put all of those also on its own web page and into their own catalog. Many of you may know about Bionomia, this amazing website that collates and visualizes all of the specimens that are in GBIF, so the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, that were collected by a particular collector. So this is one collector, Ines Mejia's collector profile on Bionomia with data pulled from the Wikidata QID, which it does for deceased collectors. For living collectors, Bionomia actually uses people's ORCID, O-R-C-I-D. And then Bionomia also links to the Wikipedia article about that person. So all of this information that's pulling from Wikidata, Wikipedia, or ORCID provides context to this particular collector and all the collections that this botanist made that were sourced from GBIF. So you can see how things are starting to be pulled together using Wiki platform. There are a number of ways to link collections information and institutions with botanists and botanical collectors using Wikidata. So here are some examples of a few of the Wikidata properties and identifiers that can be used to do this for a botanical collector. For example, you can see that on this Wikidata profile item that there are properties called collection items at and archives at. And so you can start listing all of the institutions where this person has collections or archives. Multiple institutions can be added as statements for each of these properties. You can also see an example of a museum identifier being added here. So at our museum, Te Papa, we have New Zealand's botanical collector Nancy Adams stored as person identifier 2583. That's an identifier we use internally, but we can also share this on Wikidata, and we've actually, or someone has actually added that to Nancy Adams Wikidata item here. On the flip side, we can also link to Wikidata within our institutional collections database. So at the museum where I work, we now have a straightforward way of adding Wikidata and other identifiers to our museum's collection database. We do this in two ways. We use EMU as our internal database. So in the tab of numbers and identifiers, we literally just plunk in the Wikidata QID for that particular person. Second, in the Web Associations tab, we actually add the link to that Wikidata item, and then we can tell it whether we want this to show up or not on our collections online. And in this case, we've said, yes, please publish this information, and then the information is cycled through. So you can see now on the bottom page, on the page we have about Nancy Adams, it has a related link section and it's linking to her Wikidata item, which then links back to our person item in Te Papa. So it's got that circularity.
So how do you edit Wikidata? Well, we highly recommend completing the Wikidata tours tutorial before getting started. And we've included a link to a YouTube video, which also gives some information on how to go about this. When you're ready, go to the main page of Wikidata. If you manually want to create a entirely new item, you can press on the left-hand side, there's a Create New Item tab. But before you do this, we highly recommend searching Wikidata for what you want before attempting to create a new item, because it's, you want to avoid creating duplicate items. But if you're sure there's no Wikidata item for it, then knock yourself out. Press Create New Item and create one. If you just want to edit an item, you go to that item and then press the Add Statement button. And you can then add the property you want to use, for example, date of birth, and then add the data you want to add to that Wikidata item. Again, we highly recommend starting with manually editing Wikidata before you start progressing to bulk editing. We've put some links into some beginner documentation, also some videos on how to edit Wikidata to start you off on your Wikidata editing journey. Now, Wikidata contains data on all sorts of topics, and as a result, there are multitudes of different types of Wikidata items. And over the next few slides, we're going to highlight some botany-related Wikidata types of items. For example, Wikidata contains multitudes of items on taxa. And the example given in this slide is a well-modelled plant species item for an Australian endemic eucalyptus species. And this item was picked because it contains well-structured and mostly well-referenced data statements. It's a good template to follow for botany taxa items. You can see the item also links to the Wikimedia Commons image category, as well as different language Wikipedia articles for the species. Thus, a Wikidata item can actually give you a summary of the coverage of that species in the Wikiverse. And the link in this slide takes you to this figure, which gives just some of the properties that can be used on a taxon item. It can help you guide you when editing and adding data to a taxon Wikidata item. And you can see there's quite a few properties you can use. Wikidata also contains multitudes of items on people, including botanists and botanical collectors. The item in the slide is a well-modelled botanist item with well-structured and well-referenced data. It can be used as a template to guide editing of Wikidata items about people. We also included a link to a teaching resource for creating Wikidata items for collectors, and we've included a webinar video on how to create a Wikidata item for bat collectors. And again, this figure contains just some of the properties that can be used on a botanist person item, and hopefully it will help guide your editing of Wikidata. Wikidata also contains very many items on different types of publications, including scholarly articles. Again, the example given in the slide, well-modelled scholarly article that can be used again as a template. Basically, we picked it again because it's got well-structured, well-referenced data statements, and it's quite a good template to follow when creating or expanding scholarly article Wikidata items. Finally, as there's only so much we can cover in this short webinar, we've recently included this slide because we collaborated on this open access paper in the Annals of Botany, which was published earlier this year, and it goes into a lot more detail on how and why Wikidata is useful for botany and botanists. So feel free to have a read. There's a lot more detail in there.
So we've made it to the end of the Wikidata session and just about the end of our slides. Well done, everyone. We've covered a lot of information in the last 40 minutes about how to edit Wikipedia, add images to Wikimedia Commons, and how to edit Wikidata. And we've kind of framed that in the context of botany and botanists. We realize we have covered a lot, but we encourage you to be bold, give editing the Wikiverse a go. And if you do, you will learn basically by doing. So please come back to this video. We're going to upload it and we will send you a link to the recording. Use the resources we've provided on the webinar wiki page. Again, you can reach that page with this QR code. And feel free to reach out to us via email or on wiki platforms. If you have any problems or questions, we're more than happy to guide you through tricky questions or how to do this or how to do that. We also recommend that you connect with your local wiki community. So there are wiki communities throughout the world, and hopefully there is one in your local area. The QR code Oh, sorry. Yeah, this QR code takes you to the webinar page, which gives links to various wiki communities. Now, we focused on Australia and New Zealand because that's kind of where we're based here, but you'll see once you start clicking through, there's lots of other wiki communities around the world. So please have a look at that and see if one is in your local area.
So thank you for listening to us. We're going to now click through to just the copyright slide for these slides. Then we're going to end the presentation, stop the recording, and then we'll move on to questions.
Yeah, thanks everyone. It's been really great to share this information with you. And I'm just now going to stop the recording and then we will go to question time.